To create a CRUD, create, read, update, delete, application with Laravel and Angular, you would need to set up a Laravel backend API and an Angular frontend application. The backend API would handle the data storage and retrieval operations, while the front-end application would provide the user interface for interacting with the data. Here are the key steps to create a CRUD application with Laravel and Angular. Set up the development environment. Install PHP 7 and Node.js 8+/npm for the development environment. Create an Okta developer account for user authentication and authorization. Install and configure the Laravel application. Install the Laravel command globally on the system through Composer. Create a new Laravel project and start the development PHP server. Create a MySQL database and user for the application. Edit the env file to enter the database credentials. Create a model and migration for the entity, for example, player, to define the database schema. Create API resources and routes for CRUD operations. Secure the backend API with Okta for user authentication and authorization. Create a service in Angular. Use the Angular CLI tool to create a service for handling HTTP requests to the Laravel API. Define methods in the service for performing CRUD operations, for example, retrieving a list of players, creating a new player, updating player information, deleting a player. Build the Angular front-end application. Create components and templates for the user interface, such as displaying a list of players, adding new players, updating player information, and deleting players. Integrate Okta for user authentication and authorization in the Angular application. Enable CORS for the API. Install a CORS package for Laravel to handle cross-origin requests from the Angular front-end application. Display data and handle CRUD operations. Fetch data from the Laravel API using the service in the Angular application. Implement functionality to create, read, update, and delete data through the Angular user interface. Test and deploy the application. Test the CRUD application to ensure that data operations work as expected. Deploy the Laravel backend and Angular frontend applications separately, as recommended, to example.com and example.com/API, respectively. By following these steps, you can create a fully functional CRUD application with Laravel and Angular, integrating Okta for secure user authentication and authorization. This approach allows for the development of a robust web application with a powerful backend API and a dynamic front-end user interface. The Angular front-end application can communicate with the Laravel backend API for CRUD operations through HTTP requests. This involves using Angular's HTTP client module to send HTTP requests to the Laravel API endpoints, such as GET, POST, PUT, and DELETE, to perform CRUD operations on the data. In the Angular application, you would create services to handle the HTTP requests to the Laravel API. These services would use the HTTP client module to make requests to the appropriate API endpoints, such as retrieving a list of players, creating a new player, updating player information, or deleting a player. For example, you would use the HTTP client's GET method to retrieve data from the Laravel API, POST method to create new records, PUT method to update existing records, and DELETE method to remove records. Additionally, you would need to handle CORS, cross-origin resource sharing, to allow the Angular frontend to communicate with the Laravel backend API, ensuring that the API server allows requests from the Angular application's domain. Overall, the communication between the Angular frontend and Laravel backend for CRUD operations involves setting up HTTP services in Angular to send requests to the appropriate API endpoints in the Laravel backend, and handling CORS to enable cross-origin communication.